Well, hello everyone. You're here to show you the Big Bird and Big Bird Chef coloring right here. As you see right here, is I went ahead and colored Big Bird and included like what you call is like a chef hat, and the hat that would be represented is like knowing about how it fits. It's like knowing about the how it fits on the top of the head. It is and knowing about for the type of cook is like if most of us were to get a job, it's like as some type of what you call a pro chef. It is. And then if you enjoy say spending time in the kitchen, it is. But anyway, that here show you is that some basic skills. It's like which I went ahead and drew. You say on like what you call a coloring right here, and basically that people people would probably think about is like if you're going to be learning how to cook or do any type of say in the kitchen, say exercises along with the so you could practice on knowing how to cook something, and of course with seasoning and all that other stuff. But it's like basically the stuff, the particular stuff that you learned in like you say consumer economics, or it's like any type of cook shows it is. But anyway, talking about right here, it's like with like a chef. It's like with the chef's knives right here. Talking about with like washing, it's like sanitizing, cleaning, and sanitizing, along with the loaf of bread, and of course with this is handling it, and of course. That start out right here is like with the chef with the knife, and a lot of times with most of the time that I keep I would think that a lot of times is that if you're going to be what you call in the kitchen using the knives, it is that I remember whenever I was in FACS class, it was in consumer economics, I remember that a lot of times is that they would let you use a knife at times, like a basic cutting knife, and the type of knives that they would usually let you use would be like what you call as the types of knives that were like what you call as like a chef, like a say type V-shaped type knife it is, and then knowing about how it's used. And a lot of times you're probably thinking about this that with most knives it is, and of course I have knives here, it's like here and around the house that I could use, but on the other hand too, that knowing about is like I just think that really they kind of dangerous, and knowing about the fact that it's like if you're not too careful with them, then it's like knowing about it. Because I remember whenever I was handling a few knives, it was that knowing about this, like with a lot of the teachers, they would make sure that that they handle it right, and a lot of times that with it's like with the handlers, it is that knowing about like the way to handle the knife is of course is to put the one finger right here, and then of course have a good grip on a knife. It is to have all say 4 fingers. Let's say if it's crosshaired onto the onto the handle. It's like don't touch the blade. I guess to say with most chefs it say is that never touch the blade. It's like only that whenever if maybe if you were cleaning it, I'm sure that with most of the time, with most of those cooks, it is that they would probably say that that really it is not really common to touch the blade for any reason. But if you do have to touch the blade, to know it's like to be extremely careful. It's like whenever handling the blade, it is that if it's cleaning it or if it's sharpening the blade, it is. But on the other hand too, that with most chef's knives, it is that knowing about that if you're going to be using the types of knives that I've used a couple of them, and not what you call is like any of those other type of say the ones with the control ball or anything like that I've only used like steak knives, and along with say butter knives and other types of knives, and knowing about what the knives goes is that with most cooks, it is, and knowing about really that I guess they're not really all that dangerous. I guess it's like knowing about the fact between working like in the heat. It's like knowing about that if you were to have a cooking recipe that you would ask for maybe about 1 3/4 to say maybe 3/4 so of a stick of butter it is, and measure it by say inches, knowing about if you have like a whole stick of butter right here, and then of course it's like if we were to say the decimal fraction, it is the decimal fraction would be is like maybe about if 1 stick of butter, I think if I remember right, 1 stick of butter is about 4 3/4 something like that. If I do the math right, but anyway, but you have a like each part of the stick of butter would represent, it's like what you call it, it's like a math of a measurement amount for what you would need to put in a recipe. And of course, I remember I have some measuring, some butter, say sticks of butter, say measuring tapes around here. But other than that, is talk about right here with Big Bird and knowing about it's like the perfect slice on a loaf of bread it is. And a lot of people probably think about that, which I know a lot of times I like my bread, coated say with butter it is, knowing about that's like if it will be served on at the table it is, and knowing about it's like the type of bread that you think that you would be, if it's toast or anything like that, and knowing the type of bread that you think that you will be cooking it is. And it's like a lot of times that not really with bread, but then the most common things I remember having trouble with in the kitchen, of course, is working with maybe a frozen, if it's steak or if it's anything that it's like that requires a knife. And a lot of times that if I can remember right, that the things that I usually had the dice and cut around here are usually like just not here recently, but like apples. I think a couple of times that if you were to be slicing fruit, it is say I'll go ahead and maybe if see here, maybe I'm only using a blue and a green say markers it is, but let's just say if I go ahead and like draw like an apple, if you were to be drawing like if you were to be baking, it's like doing a chef project of what you call it, it's like with an apple, and knowing about with the apple is if you were to cut it, if you were to want to cut it, say split it in two, or split it in like 3/4, you say for an apple it is. And knowing about with that apple is that a lot of times is that knowing about if you want to cut in the center, a lot of times it tends to maybe slip sideways or anything like that, and of course you would have like the seeds and stuff in the center. But then of course with most of the time with knives is that you would think about that if you're going to be using any type of knife, and I remember whenever I was in fast class that they would have it to where that you would hold it in position. It's like kind of like what say is like with the handle and about like this, and of course the blade would be at about right here along this say center line it is, and then and with the blade it is, and knowing about the fact about really about how sharp do you think the blade would be. It's like knowing about, it's like if you were to look at it, and a lot of times with most people they would maybe think about it's like, well, go ahead and touch it and see if it but on the other hand too, that maybe an electrician or whoever could probably say that well, how do you know how do you know if it's hot? I mean, are you going to touch an oven just to see if it's hot? I mean, I know I'm not. I'm more likely that there's what you call that chef trick to knowing about if you think that, wondering about, really, is the water cold? If you want to put your hand up to it just to see if it's cold or warm or whatever. And but I would probably think about knowing about something else other than putting your hand, putting yourself say in some type of danger, is knowing about how to handle it. It's like in the kitchen, is that if it's a sprayer or if it's any type of chef's knife it is, and knowing about like what you call is like what the hat stands for. More likely it's like what you call maybe the professional way of doing what you do is like in the kitchen, is knowing about how to use most of these accessories it is. But most of the time it's like knowing about with most knives it is that quite a few of them are sharp, but then on the other hand too, that as long as you use them properly, is that knowing about that any type of abuse that you put on them or any type of pressure it is, that more likely that you say that there ain't no problem with you dulling the blade it is that knowing about it's like how safe it is, that is be able to use around the house. And then of course is that with most children it is that if I can remember right, that I was about I don't know, I think see here how old I was whenever I started using a knife. And it's like knowing about with most of the time they say that is to make sure that you wash up your hands, like we say with the type of soap that that you're familiar with. But I would probably say that I was maybe at least 13, something like that. If I remember right, that I used a butter knife those couple of times. And then, of course, it's like any type of training that I had in the kitchen for whatever type of knife that I was using. It went to maybe a steak knife or any type of social, handling. It's like when they say that if you're going to be handling it's like what you call it from the left and right hand is knowing about how to pass a knife is to pass it by the handle. It's like not by the blade, not by the blade, because it's like knowing about a way to handle the knife is, of course, is to pass it by the handle. It is from hand to hand from the handle. And of course that's the way I was learning. But so far the safety tips it is knowing about how it cuts, and then of course with like sanitizing your hands and knowing about, it's like what you call it, it's like the professional, it's like knowing about what the most chefs would probably say. But other than that, with Big Bird is knowing about that, if you're going to be spending time in the kitchen, then more likely knowing about that, really, that what is the main purpose to why why we had to use heat, or to say in the microwave or anything like that. It's like go ahead and draw the microwave, but it's like if it's a stovetop or if it's the microwave, is knowing about. It's like why is heating sources required? But I guess there's that type of question maybe on Yahoo Answers, that the knowing about is that type of a way of knowing about. It's like that it's not ready to be served until, as you say, until it's like about well done. It is, if you were to with the bread, a lot of times if it's doughy, then that usually means a lot of times with most cakes or brownies or anything like that you're baking or anything like that. It's like what about is if you were to cut say in the center, it is sliced through the center, and then knowing about knowing if it's between, other than burnt, but other than that is knowing about if it's baked well and if it's done or not. But other than that is talking about what the chefs say what you call the directions before I start working in the kitchen, and always at least maybe just draw out some ideas for whatever it comes to my mind. But other than that is talking about what you say is Big Bird, so far as Big Bird Chef Cutlery.